I'm delighted to be joined by Janina, Arndt, and Lucy Atkinson from the Fey Fellowes Podcast. How's it going? Are you having a good evening?
Yeah, pretty good.
Nice one. Thanks very much for coming back. We're going to talk about magic systems, something that hasn't really featured that much on the podcast so far. To be totally honest, I'm not a massive user of magic and stories. I don't know about you two.
I'm kind of in the like magic is talked about, but it doesn't exist kind of a thing because I'm working in historical fiction at the minute.
Yeah, nice. Sort of flirting with the idea. What about you, Janina?
I've just explained my magic system in my novel about halfway through. So it was a soft magic system to start with. Nobody knew what was going on. And then it suddenly turned into, this is how the magic system works.
Yeah.
With like the sort of Gandalf mentor figure explaining how magic works.
Nice.
So then it turned into a hard magic system, and that sort of transition cost me about a year of work. I'm happy with it now.
Oh, nice. You mentioned a few interesting phrases there, hard and soft magic, so we're going to go into them in a little bit, but I completely get what you mean there when you say about like that transition from soft to hard magic, because that's what I'm sort of doing in my story now, where like magic is a thing in the world, but it was lost like in time, and the bad guys in the story have found a way to sort of bring it back, and it's from the perspective of just like ordinary people, and they've got no idea, absolutely no fucking clue what magic is. So it was quite interesting writing the discovery of that and how that jars with your sort of understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And then I haven't really defined it as such because it's sort of like it's in the rekindling phase of the sort of magic coming back into sort of society. So I don't really want to define it though. And I think that's what we're going to discuss, isn't it? So I think let's start with hard magic. Who wants to take a swing at the definition of a hard magic system?
I just actually had a debate with my partner about that, who's a dungeon master himself. So Dungeons and Dragons, for example, would be an example of a hard magic system because the players have to know how magic works, what the limitations are, how they can use spells, what components are necessary to cast a spell, what effects the spell has, and so on and so forth. So there is some debate whether the hard magic system has to be logical to the player, reader, viewer, whatever, the audience, or whether it also has to be somewhat like, I don't want to say scientifically explained, but like, be completely, fully sort of constructed so it sits in that world with no questions being there, and it works pretty much as closely as we can explain science. But it's probably the main thing is that a hard magic system is understood by the audience as to what, like, how it works, what the limitations are, and they could imagine, like, they could actively imagine, like, I would have to do this in order to cause this effect in that world.
Yeah, brilliant definition there, Nina. Like you say, it's like a well-defined system, isn't it? The reader can understand the rules and the limitations, the possibilities. Like, I suppose it's one of them where you wouldn't have a scene where all of a sudden this character whips out a staff and blows up half the army or something like that. It would jar because it doesn't fit with the understanding of the magic system that's come before that. So I suppose you could get away with it in a softer system where you don't have to explain as much. But I often find, I don't know what you two think, you tend to find like harder magic systems in stories where magic plays more of a central role.
Definitely. I think that's also like it's necessary to see how important magic is before you decide what sort of magic system you go for. Because if magic really isn't that important in your story, it's like, like a sci-fi info dump if you suddenly have a a lengthy description of how magic works when it doesn't add anything to the plot. So, like, I know there's this somewhat of a prejudice against soft magic systems. Like, the writer didn't bother enough to like flesh it out and make it make sense and all that. But I think it just depends what you need it for, basically. And I think, like, well, you're right. If you've got a soft magic system and you've got, a wizard who can just use a staff and suddenly decides the battle, that works because, like, we don't know how it happened. But I feel like actually you can get more payoff with a hard magic system if everything makes sense, and then you have a big gesture like that and it makes sense within the system. That is much more powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Sense. What do you think, Lizzie?
Doesn't Sanderson say something too when he like laid out the soft and hard magic, that as well as being like how well we understand the magic system, it's also kind of to do with who the magic system is being used by. So it makes sense to have a softer magic system if your protagonist is not using magic, because then they wouldn't understand how the magic worked to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if your protagonist is casting spells and doesn't know how the spells are being cast, then it becomes a bigger thing. So we tend to see hard magic too in novels that have the main characters using magic.
Yeah, that's a really great point, that. I suppose, like you say, if a character is like a priest, then religion's obviously going to be a big part of their life. If they're a wizard or a witch, then magic's going to be a big part of their life. So it's just naturally going to take more of a central role. So I think that's a really great way to look at it. So if you're not sure about whether to go for like a hard magic system or a soft magic system, it's looking at the characters, seeing what's important to them. So have you got any, you mentioned Brandon Sanderson, either of you read Mistborn? I'd say that's a bit of a hard magic system.
I've I've started them, but there's a lot of books. So
yeah.
I'm getting through it.
Yeah. What did you think of the burning metal superhuman ability magic system?
I get along with Sanderson's like system and way of explaining things quite well. I don't have a lot of criticisms of it. I know that some people think it's a little bit cliche or too far, but I get on quite well with Sanderson's system. I think it's all quite well explained and in a way that doesn't feel like, like we're constantly getting exposition all the time.
Yeah. Have you read it, Janina? Mistborn?
No.
Not got around to that. If anyone else listening hasn't read it either, basically this magic system, it involves, I can't remember now if it's certain people have the ability to burn metals that they ingest. And these are quite rare and precious metals, and different ones, different types of metals can have different effects or give you different powers, as far as I can remember. Is that right, Lucy?
That sounds right from what I can
Sounds about right, yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's obviously limited because once the person's like burned the metal, then it's gone, and there are only so many bits of metal available in the world. So yeah, that's quite an interesting limitation on it. And I think they spin it, don't they, by, I think in the thrust of Mistborn is that they find this new type of metal, which gives some super abilities, and that is quite rare. So that was an interesting addition to the magic system. Have either of you read The Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss?
No, but I did. It is on my list. I'd very much like to. I love Patrick Rothfuss. Seen a couple of his talks.
Oh, nice. Have you read it, Janina?
Nope, but it is on my list also.
On the list.
Everyone's TBR. Yeah, I've read it a while ago now, but that had a really good hard magic system. I think it was based, as far as I can remember, on a person's understanding of the true names of things. And
oh yeah, a bit like Aragon, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it is like that. But like, I don't think I only read the first book actually. So they didn't really get into the magic, but I understand the rules become a lot clearer as it goes on. And that's just as the character becomes more magically adept, I suppose, and he gets more experience and learns more about it. So that's a really natural way of expanding upon, like you're talking about that transition before, so going from like a soft magic system to like a hard magic system.
Yeah, absolutely. Like using magic as a mystery, very much. That's what I liked as well about well, I mean, don't want to talk too much about Harry Potter these days, but like it does use like certain elements of magic as like you find out about them and about how they work later on in the book, and that explains things then. But it's part of the mystery and part of the very much like a crime novel, the structure. And then magic is used to explain how certain things went. And I quite like that way of like explaining magic through that, because it intrigues the reader as well as not like info dumping.
Yeah. Have you either you read any books that any particularly favorite books that have used hard magic systems?
Yeah, I mean, I've started on, after watching Shadow and Bone, I did start on the Grishaverse. A bit disappointed, like everyone.
Oh, really? I've not read it.
Yeah, well, so the thing is that the Netflix series is more of an ensemble cast, and they've adapted it.
Yeah, they put a few different stories together, didn't they? I know
exactly.
this was a
for a lot older people. Than the books originally were, and the books are a bit of a teenage romance, and that not my first go-to at the minute. But that uses arguably a hard magic system, because there are different kinds of, like, it's elemental magic. I think that's another kind of magic that's important to mention. Obviously, when you stumble upon magic, hard and soft doesn't have to be the only distinction. You've obviously got elemental magic, you've got spells, and there's rituals, and all sorts. And that is sort of based upon like an innate ability of the magic user to manipulate a certain element around them.
Yeah.
Like physically, basically. Like they can rearrange the molecules in the air to cause wind. And you understand that in the books. You understand how that comes about, basically. Although it's not like, you can argue about that again, because like it's not that much detail, about how that actually like comes about. It's more sort of, well, they can influence air, they can influence blood. These people can influence fire, in some ways. But like it is somewhat explained that they channel an element that they're innately connected to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've something else that I always like this quote. I think it was, I can't remember if it was one of his lectures now, but Brandon Sanderson, he said that he likes his hard magic systems to have costs for the user. And I think that's a really good limitation to put on things. And it always reminds me of this series of books by James Barclay called Chronicles of the Raven. And the people who use magic, they would get like physically fatigued, so they'd have to recharge and meditate. Or I think they used to do things like put the hands in the earth so that they could sort of draw energy from living things around them to sort of restore. So that's a really cool limitation, I think. So thinking that what the cost of magic is, and it has on the user.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either of you read anything by Brent Week? Because I have a lot of people, I've not read it myself, but the Lightbringer series apparently has got a really brilliant magic system, which is based on the manipulation of light, and different users can use different colours to do all different kinds of things. And I think it's quite scientific as well. But what I found a quite interesting quote, and apparently he says the more constraints that you put on a magic system, the more interesting it becomes. And I quite like that, because it sort of ties in with the idea of just creating conflict in your story. So
yeah, absolutely, gives you some good options for plot points as well.
Yeah, I guess I went completely blank, but it's kind of a middle one. One that I would have been reading recently is The Wheel of Time,
Oh yeah.
which in the first book, at the very least, seems like a very soft magic system, but I'm told starts to get a little bit more set in stone as the books go on. I've only just read the first book, but that has quite a similar thing where it's not, the limitation is not necessarily on like how the magic can be used or the cost of the magic, but more so like who can use the magic. And if the wrong people try and use it, then there's consequences for that. So there becomes a kind of dynamic of like consequences for trying to take power that is not power that you're supposed to take, kind of a thing.
Nice. Those are all kinds of interesting questions, that, isn't it?
As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long, and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. It's time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you. LinkedIn Ads empowers marketers to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
So, that's what you think about the other side of the coin and soft magic? Lucy, go on. Do you want to give us a definition of what soft magic is?
So soft magic, I guess, is just the opposite of what hard magic is. It's kind of flimsy, it's kind of non-defined. The rules of the magic are not clearly laid out. So we maybe know that it exists and we maybe know what it can do, but we don't know where maybe it comes from, or we don't know the limitations of it or what it costs or any of those kind of things. It's a magic system that we as a reader don't have to or are not supposed to understand, I suppose, as far as I see it.
Yeah, definitely. I always found it quite mysterious. And like we say, there's that element of unpredictability, so you can get that wizard who just whips out his staff and saves the day with a quick spell. And sometimes I think particularly in certain kinds of fantasy, you can get them sort of cliche endings where, oh, the magic is the tool that solves all the plot problems. Oh, let's just invent a spell to get out of this mess.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely the danger with a soft magic system, I think.
Yeah, because you can just literally turn around and say, fuck it, it's just magic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to explain it, it's fantasy.
Yeah. I'm in the right genre. Yeah. And the first thing that actually came to my mind was, which isn't magic or fantasy, but was the sonic screwdriver. Because I was like, in Doctor Who, they just use it for whatever purpose they need in the story. Just unlocks any door, basically. And like, it's never been defined what it can do.
Yeah. So, yeah, things like that, they cheapen the story of it. And I think what we're trying to discuss here is sort of maybe lazier examples of magic systems, which is the danger when you go for like a soft magic approach, I think. But at the same time, you can make a soft magic system really interesting, like you say, mysterious and intriguing for people, can't you?
Yeah.
I think
and
there's been
especially if it's
videos.
not like the center of the story.
Yeah.
You know, then like having little bits of information fed in that can be really, really interesting.
I think when you do the soft magic approach, if the characters aren't really engaging with the magic, but the magic is there, simmering in the background and it's existing and other people are interacting with it, I think that can really help bring your world to life if you're trying to enhance your world building.
Absolutely. I think it still like can help if you know what's going on, even if you're not revealing it.
Yeah.
To an extent, I would say on that front, because then that prevents you from suddenly, having the wizard save the day sort of thing.
I know. What would you think would be the things to avoid then, or to be mindful of when you're going for a soft magic system?
Well, apart from that one,
yeah, that's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, the Deus Ex Machina. I think one of the things as well as important examples obviously would include both Narnia and Middle Earth, and like I think the problem that I've got with Middle Earth, if you so wish, is that like you've not really got that much background at all on the main antagonist.
Yeah.
So, and like, if you sort of get a glimpse of the powers of the ring to an extent, but like, you don't really, for example, it's never really explained how the ring would give like power to Sauron.
Yeah, that's true though.
Invisible,
All
you
you
know?
see him at the start is just like swinging his mace,
Yeah,
and about a dozen fellas flying up into the air. So is it like a super strength ring?
yeah, exactly. And I think that's like it is somewhat used conveniently for story purposes, like, oh well, now Frodo's corrupted. Now, you know, Gollum is corrupted, you know, or Boromir. It's like, but like we don't really know why it or like how it really corrupts them, and that I think I would have found that personally, I would have found that very interesting how it does that, and then why it would have had a different effect on Sauron, as in giving him power rather than, because all we can see it doing is taking power away from people, is people being consumed by it, really.
Yeah. I always understood it as the ring containing Sauron's soul or something along them lines, and he needed to reclaim it to come back to Earth, or I don't know.
Yeah,
Like you say, it's never really explained. I
yeah.
just assumed that. I don't know where I got that from.
I think that's the thing, though. When your reader can make assumptions that make sense to them, it's fine. But when the thing that the soft magic kind of creates is like the pivotal central focus of the novel, that's when it becomes a problem. If like every 5 seconds we're being like, it's about the ring, it's about the ring, it's all about the ring, but we don't know what the ring does or how it got there or where it's from or what's going on with it. Not that I'm saying that is the situation in Lord of the Rings. That's when it becomes a problem, and you're like, I don't even, how do you expect me as a reader to care about this when I don't know anything about it? That's when it becomes a problem, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think a good example, Game of Thrones, the TV series, the whole hold door thing, hold the door thing, and the time traveling.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was just like one episode, and never bothered to go back to that one. So that for me was like, this is a frustrating soft magic approach.
Yeah, I think consistency is key. That's the whole thing. Even if it is soft, it needs to be somewhat consistent and not like look like convenient storytelling.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that really was annoying. Like the whole, we never found out anything else about Bran, really. I'm sure the books are going to be different, but
yeah.
What did you guys think? Did you not like that approach?
Yeah, it's frustratingly, that's the problem with Game of Thrones. It's not consistent in its magic system, because sometimes I think the way they do the like little bits of magic, the stuff that comes from the deities, the stuff with Daenerys and the prophecies, that's all kind of sensible, and it's quite, even though we don't understand the mechanics of it, it's still like there's enough mystery and also enough that we know for it to be interesting. But with the stuff with the time travel and that kind of stuff, it's like, where are we going here? And we never really know. That is frustrating.
I know, like you say, no, that early part with the Daenerys and the dragons, that was fantastic for me. That's the kind of level of magic I like. It's not getting too intricate beyond there, you know what I mean? You don't have to think too much about it. You can just enjoy it. Enjoy the magic of it.
Yeah, definitely.
The more you define it, the less magical it becomes, arguably. I think Tolkien said magic is mysterious and mystical, and in itself is a sense of wonder. So, I think that's my approach to magic. Like George R. Martin apparently said he doesn't like to define magic, and again, he thinks it's like a thing of wonder and beauty, and it can play a big part in stories, can't it? Like that sort of draws readers deeper and makes them want to uncover how it works. But to achieve that, you've got to avoid the magic, the crazy magic that jars with people. So, something I wanted to ask you before we finish was like looking for ways essentially to create conflict with magic, because I don't know, I just love conflict in stories, and I'm always trying to find ways to inject it. And we've covered a few interesting things, particularly with hard magic, about putting costs and limitations in. But I was just wondering what your thoughts were on like the effects of like magic on wider society. So like how would, say, non-magic users view magic and their interactions with magic users? What do you think about that?
There's a really interesting dynamic to set up there, isn't there? Because magic, on the one hand, makes everything so much easier. So it sets up that dichotomy of like the people who have it and the people who don't, and that can become that kind of like in thing. Maybe harbor jealousy or fear out of those things that like other people can't do. But I think that the other limitation of it too is like there's an emotional cost to that. If you can get everything you want with a click of your fingers, do you eventually realize I don't actually want that? That's not what I want. It's too easy. Because sometimes the working for something is the benefit. So there's that kind of thing that you can play around with magic too, I think.
Yeah, I always think it's quite interesting when you've got like religion, which is based on faith and like things like miracles and believing that these things are possible. And then you've got magic, which in other definitions would be like a miracle, like the doing miraculous things, and how that sort of jars them two sort of beliefs. So yeah, religion always plays an interesting role when there's a magic system for me. And yeah, I think Game of Thrones sort of tackles it a little bit, doesn't it? But I don't think really the religious side really interacts with the magical one, does it?
I mean, I suppose in D&D, for example, it's more or less it works quite similarly. So, and then you've got warlocks as well who channel their who get their powers from demons and demon overlords and such. So, and they're generally like regarded as a type of magic user. I think that's quite close in there, but it depends on the universe that you're in.
Yeah, no, totally. So thanks very much. I think that's a good place to stop there. This is going to be the first in a little duology on magic systems. We're going to look next time at some specific examples, particularly witchcraft, which Lucy is a real expert in. And we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and magic systems in there. And then looking at how to create your own magic systems too. So be sure to follow and subscribe, and you won't miss that episode when it comes out. All right, thanks very much, Lucy and Janina. Anyway, so tell us how we can find out more about you and the Fey Fellowes Podcast.
Yeah, so we're everywhere you can find podcasts, really, as Fey Fellowes Podcast. And we are also Fey Fellowes Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and we are Fey Fellowes on Twitter. So. Nice.
Very good. The links for everything will be in the description. Yeah, thank you very much again, ladies. And yeah, we'll see you again next time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Lucy and Janina, for giving up your time to chat all about magic systems. Hard and soft magic is a really interesting area of discussion. By looking at this aspect of the topic, you gain a real insight into the variety of magic systems that you can produce. And it's important to remember that hard magic and soft magic are just two ends of the spectrum. You've got all that space in between to have fun with and experiment. And it's there that you can find your truly unique and original ideas. If you don't want to miss the second part of our mini series on magic systems, then be sure to subscribe and follow. The next episode is out later this month, and in it we'll be talking all about creating your own systems. So lots more practical advice to come there. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a quick rating on the Spotify mobile app or a quick review on iTunes. A share on social media or with anyone who you think may be interested goes a long way too. So thank you very much if you do that. And if you'd like to join our writing community to discuss your new magic systems, maybe click the link in the description to join our Discord server. We have hundreds of people and lots of individual weekly and bi-weekly writing groups that have all formed. Lots of people getting lots of great help. So if you want to get involved with other writers to help take your writing to that next level, then click on the link in the description to join our community. And don't forget to check out our Patreon page if you're looking to get access to writing classes and communities and interviews and guides that you can't find anywhere else. That's the place to take a look. And again, the link for that is in the description. And that is about all for today. Thank you very much for listening. Like I said, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode on magic systems. And until then, keep on scribbling.